in our previous episode called How Much Pressure Are We Putting on Our Kids to Do Their Best? So I figured let me invite family psychologist Maria Jacques. We have here our book author, A Smile for Everyone, Mark Reese. We wanted to bring in real parents who have come across this particular topic we recently discussed in our previous episode called shortly.
You know, he's 8 years old. Are we pressuring him too much? Or is this a lesson that he's going to need to learn, but maybe we just slow it down a little bit? So that's actually what we just did. We pulled him out of soccer in the middle of the season. And the two big rules in the Balapoji household are you do your best and you don't give up. And unfortunately, the not giving up backfired on us because he didn't feel comfortable telling us that he didn't like soccer because he interpreted that as giving up.
Right.
So, you know, it makes me very emotional to even talk about it because, you know, for a while there I felt like such a failure as a mom because here I was pushing him with all the best intentions in the world of teaching him these life lessons. And what I was really doing was almost forcing him to a point where he really wasn't enjoying any of it. And he ended up not learning much, and it affected his self-esteem, which for me is so important.
Have you looked into introducing him into others, like just introducing, like doing a 1 week trial with different sports or arts?
Well, my kids have done all kinds of sports, and the challenge with him is that he doesn't want to do anything. So we little by little, and again, and it's not about sports, it's about anything. So at the beginning of the summer, you know, my husband and I sat there and we said, what do you want to do? And we thought of like 13 things, you know, drawing classes, chess, sailing, I mean, underwater basket weaving. We're down for really.
Yeah, what is he passionate about?
And we didn't even care what it cost. I mean, that was kind of scary when we got so desperate when we were like sailing. That's like $1,000 a week. Who cares? But what we found was that.
So there you go. So what we wanted to share with you all was just a clip so you could see a situation that Luli was currently experiencing with her son. So I want to turn the question over to Maria regarding, you know, she's experiencing a situation where, you know, her son is just not passionate about anything right now, and they're just going through that process to figure out what can they do to engage him. So, and the whole thing of competition is what's squirming him away. So what do you think?
Well, you know, it was kind of interesting to listen to her perspective of how they're approaching it. But, you know, I listened to the show, and I think that sometimes what we have to look at is that, you know, we're not used to our kids just being. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we want them involved in so many different activities. And one of the things that I would say to her is, well, what's wrong with him just not doing anything right now? You know, sometimes kids need you know, kind of think of it in terms of being, you know, in the animal kingdom, the bears, they hibernate for a while. You know, it's part of nature. They go into a cave and they hibernate, and then they come out and they're refreshed, and they go through their cycle. And I think that every child is very different, okay? She talked a lot about her son not being competitive. Well, not every kid is competitive. Mm-hmm. And so maybe there are kids, you know, there are kids that don't want to play sports. And maybe he's just okay with not doing anything right now. Maybe it might change later on. But what happens, and what I find with parents is it becomes more the parents' issue that they want them involved, because the parent feels they have to be involved in something. Mm-hmm. As long as, you know, and I always have a condition, as long as the child that doesn't want to be involved in any activities doesn't turn into the video games, and that's all they do. Right. Because then it is about an escape into the video games, and I do have issues with kids, and I have worked with kids that become addicted to the video games. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and it's just, you know, sometimes kids can learn, and parents can learn from just, you know, allowing their kids that time to just not do anything. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's more our issue as parents than it is really about the child.
Yeah, that's true. As far as you know, the society today, one of the points that Stella was making during the show, and which I can tune back to shortly, but she did present a very good question, and what is a parent's definition of success and what it means to them? And maybe I can ask that to Mark real quickly, you know, how does he view, you know, success, and then how does his partner also perceive?
That I love what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? I'm doing the things that I love to do, and I feel like I'm successful at them. Do you know what I mean? But in a lucrative way,
Right.
you know, it's like that is difficult.
Translating that and monetizing it.
Yeah.
But let me show real quick in the particular episode that I was referring to just a second ago.
About the question of the word best was, as parents, in relation to my stepson who's 21, my husband and I were eons apart, because when I was, you know, hoping for what my stepson was going to be, I was thinking like a doctor or a lawyer or, a police detective. Mm-hmm. And my husband was just so grateful that he wasn't in trouble. Right. So it's a really good question to ask yourself, what is your version of best? And whose version is it? Yours or theirs?
Or theirs. And I think that
Yep, so that whole did exactly what you were saying as far as the success.
But as parents, what are we feeling, you know? And if they fail, you know, so many times, you know, it kind of brings me back to the session that I was doing today with the father. You know, one of the things he was saying is, well, if my child fails, it's a reflection of me. And you know, and if my son's, you know, has bad table manners, it's a reflection of me, that I'm a bad parent. I didn't teach him right. So, you know, sometimes we assume that all our children's failures become our failures as parents, and that's where you need to draw the line. And I think that that's where sometimes the pressure to what, you know, to succeed or to perform or to do comes from parents.
Of course, important to me is always doing your best, never giving up as well. And I always like to try to enforce the idea, try to finish something that you start. I just think that's an important quality for me, is that we're going to start something, I'm really going to try to finish it. I just think it's an important quality, and it's just a little kind of a philosophy that I try to inherit and live by too.
You know, one of the questions we had during the previous show that we were just looking at on how much do we pressure our kids to do their best, it was, you know, when you're trying to teach them something and it backfires at you. And one of the biggest, I would say, lesson that's important for Luli is, you know, carrying through what you were just saying as far as never giving up and having follow through. And one of the toughest decisions that they had to make was taking her son out of soccer. And because it just wasn't working out. And
you phrase things for children, and telling someone don't give up, you got to think, the brain thinks in pictures. When you tell somebody don't give up, the brain has to conceive in the mind what giving up is in terms of a picture, and then the second step is they have to negate that in order to know what to do. So when you tell someone don't give up, they're actually in their mind imagining what giving up is. So you've created giving up in the mind, and then they have to go that added step. Do you get it?
Right.
So I would say reframe the statement don't give up to be more in the affirmative, not the negative.
Interesting, I like that. I'm just thinking what would be the word to use as far as reframing it, so rather than using a negative connotation, because like you said, like by don't give up, you're creating that kind of vision of what it would look like to give up. So what you're saying is use the word so that the space that you're creating for them is moving them into a vision of what it's like making it happen, I guess. or getting
Yeah,
to the
I mean,
finish line? Like, can you get to the finish? Well, that almost sounds like you're putting pressure. Get to the finish line. I'm just trying to think what would be a good word to use.
no, do your best. What is it that you want to accomplish here? You know, what is it that you want to do? What would make you feel that you know, what would make you feel satisfied? What would make you feel that, you know, you did what it is that you set out to do?
Ah,
Okay,
okay.
you know, using where you're creating, you know, you're creating the visual for the child and act for this, for them to actually create in their minds what it is that they want to do.
You shared stories with me sometimes. With I know that you use the train with Bodhi as far as, you know, I think I can, and then, you know, how sometimes he gets frustrated. He's like, I can't. So,
Mhm.
is there anything regarding that that sometimes you want to share?
There's things that he, even right now, says, I can't do this. And in fact, I hate hearing him say, I can't do this. I'm already wondering, how did he learn to say that already? Or how did he learn to say,
Mhm.
I can't do this? And he gets very frustrated and he'll just stop and cry, you know?
Mhm.
And at that point, just wait, just let's calm down, take a breath. You can do this. You can totally do it. I mean, I just try to, let's just start slower.
Mhm.
You know, I have to remember too that I have to start slower. Like before you write, you have to learn how to hold the pencil. And it's like, how do you teach someone to hold the pencil? I have to like go back to very basic, beginning, simple things. Like, well, first you have to learn how to hold that. First you have to learn how to hold that violin bow. Do you know what I mean? You know, how do you hold the bow? You know, how do you tie your shoe? I have to go back and rethink all of those things. How do I teach him to tie his shoe? I have to go much slower, you know, much slower now. But I just hate when I see him say, I can't do this, and he gets so upset. And then I just try to say, no, let's just go slower. See, you can do it. You can do it. He's like, you know, he feels so much better. But these very small things trying to teach a child how to do can be frustrating, I guess, for the child, you know, and trying to make it become frustrating on the parent. But just realizing, oh, I have to take a lot of steps backwards and I have to go so much slower in starting over again.
And Maria, what's your feedback on that?
Well, if I had to go back and teach a child right now how to tie his shoes, I don't know if I would know how to do that.
Plus, they have Velcro on their shoes now, so they don't really have to.
Yeah, well, you know, it's very, well, actually, there's a very, very important skill with actually learning how to tie their shoes.
Of course. Yes.
You know, I think that sometimes, you know, if they say I can't do this, you know, it's yes, sometimes they just pick up on things that they hear along the lines or whatever, you know, and sometimes it's okay, you can't do it, okay, then just come back to it, you know, take a time out, you know, let them have that moment of I can't, and then come back and say, okay, now what can you do differently? What can you do differently? You know, it's just, you know, I think it's just, you know, we need to let kids sometimes have those moments where they go into this place of not knowing, of negativity, of, you know, doubting or whatever. And I don't think we need to be, you know, as parents, I think we get very afraid of our children experiencing these states. And sometimes there's some very valuable lessons that need to be learned from that. And, you know, not allowing them to stay in that place. But, you know, you got to let kids sometimes experience, you know, those sense of doubt without always having to feel that you need to be the cheerleader and, oh, no, don't feel that way. You know, feel that way because, you know, I don't want you growing up with, you know, low self-esteem because, you know, I had low self-esteem or I had these issues, you know, you don't, you know, so it's sometimes there's some really valuable lessons that need to be learned from that.
Yeah, good point.
I just wanted to say eggs and toast. Eggs and toast is Bodhi's favorite meal right now. Eggs and toast. I thought of that.
At least it's a protein and a grain.
I think one of the things is he just always wants to win. You know, like, you know, last year especially, just wants to win. He wants to be first to get in pajamas, first to, if we're traveling in two separate cars, he wants to be in the car that's going to get home first. He wants to be, if we're just going from the bathroom to his bedroom, he wants to be the one that arrives in his bedroom first. So it's always about, and if he's not first, it's on the floor and, you know what I mean? It's just like, I wasn't first. And then we've been trying to explain, it's like, well, you know, there are going to be any times where you're not first, you know. You're going to have to practice being second or even last, you know.
Right.
You're not always going to get to be first. And but then more recently, even just like yesterday, it's just like, or this morning getting ready for school, it's like, this isn't a race. He was saying to me, this isn't a race.
So it came through.
Yeah, he was like, this isn't a race. We don't have to race to get ready. And in my head, I'm like, yes, we do, because I have to go meet Melissa. So in my head, I'm going, yes, we do have to hurry because I have to meet Valeska, but I'm not going to say it out loud. But it was just so cute. I was like, you know, or he even let me go first. You know, he let me go first into the bathroom to brush the teeth. You know.
Oh, okay.
So I just thought, well, that's really interesting. It's a little shift. It's a little change, kind of being polite, and it's not like a total breakdown if he didn't get in his pajamas first. You know.
As you were talking, Mark, what came to my mind was, you know, one of the things that, you know, with kids like, you know, Bodhi, it seems, and Xavier, but they seem very similar, who always want to be first. You know, sometimes you can do little things like acting out. I do a lot of acting out and psychodrama in my private practice. And what came to my mind was, do you remember my daughter dressed up as Thing 1 and Thing 2? Do you know those characters? Thing 1 or Thing, is it Thing 1 or Thing 2?
Yeah.
Know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Anyways, they had for Halloween, they dress, it has a 1 and then it has a 2.
Right.
But you can become very creative and create costumes, and because your kids are still very young, they really get into this imaginal play area. So make up a game and make up costumes to where you and your partners, you know, you wear the 1, the 2, and the 3, and you have him change shirts, you know, so that he experiences being first with number 1, you know, Thing 1, whatever, however you want to do it, or you can even spray paint a T-shirt, you know what I mean? You can get really creative. But, you know, have him experience, okay, what's it like to be 1, you know, and create a scenario, and then, you know, do a number 3. Well, that's last. You know, you have first, middle, and last. So have him experience all 3 in role playing. And then that opens up, you know, well, then how did you feel being first? Oh, I felt great. You know, oh, I like being first. And then when he's number 3, which is last, well, how did you feel being last? Oh, well, I didn't feel very good. Okay. And so sometimes, you know, and as a therapist, what I find is I have to teach people that sometimes it's okay to feel bad, you know. We live in a society where it's about feeling good all the time, and if you don't feel good, you got to take a pill or you got to do something. So sometimes, you know, sometimes we have to teach our kids how to cope with feeling. Okay, you feel bad. Okay, you feel bad. That's just, you know, you feel bad. But you have to, you know, how do you teach them? You know, how do you teach them how to feel bad? And be okay with it so that it doesn't, you know, it doesn't affect their entire day, for example, or continue to affect, you know, with my patients is, you know, so you don't need to keep escaping into something to feel good. So, no, it doesn't feel good to be last, but what does, you know, how do you handle that? So make it a game and make it, you know, a time that it kind of opens the door for exploring his need to always be number 1. You know, so, but it becomes a fun thing.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we could definitely close with that. That is a phenomenal point that Maria Jacques just made regarding, you know, really honing in on how you feel. And if you don't feel great, then it's okay. And how do you cope with that?